Well, good morning, or evening, or whatever time it is. I was speaking with someone earlier this week about awesome PowerPoints and how some of the teachers here just have great PowerPoints. And I really didn't want to show anybody up or make anybody feel bad, so we do not have a PowerPoint tonight. When I agreed to teach today, I was off work, and then I was asked if I wanted to come in. It's like my kids like to eat. And then I was asked, do you want to work late? It's like, I like to eat. And I barely have handwritten notes. I want to just talk to you a little bit tonight. And if I were to be forced to come up with one complaint, and I'm using this word very loosely, to come up with one complaint about not really the church, but congregations in general, what would it be? And now this is Jonathan speaking. This is just me. Sometimes we hold ourselves to such high standards that we don't want others to know we have troubles. And we expect people to think we're perfect. And I've got an example for that, and it's about me. I don't know if this is the reason or not, but I'm going to blame my dad because he's not here to defend himself. Daddy was military, and he raised us to a lot of those same ways. So my mindset is, and I know we started at 6:32, so I know. But if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. That's my mindset. Yes, we walked into the door at 6:51 today. I know. And so there was a point in my life where it seemed like every Sunday morning we're running in the door right at the morning announcements, even if we are able to hear them. And I am just frustrated beyond measure because, someone else is taking my seat, my assigned seat. Someone else is in, and now we got to sit way over here, and I don't want to sit way over here. And that's going through my mind as we're driving to the church building. And me and my wife are discussing matters. And we've never had fights, but we've had some really intense fellowship. And we're discussing this, and we're both a little bit heated. And then you walk in the building. How are you? I am great. How are you? It's just a glorious morning. I'm so happy to be here. And we talked about that. Translation, she told me what I was doing wrong. And I learned that she needed help. That I'd expected on Sunday mornings I got to sleep late, and that she would get the kids up and get dressed, and we learned, she told me, that she needed my help. So I did the best way that I could the next few weeks to motivate an overworked wife and 3 young children to get to church on time. And yelling at them is a great motivational tactic, but it leads to some more intense fellowship. And so, there for a while, every Sunday morning, I am livid. But yet, and she's livid, and the kids are livid. But yet, when you get to church, you're all smiles. And I'm using this as an example. I'm sure each of you has something of your own. You're all smiles. Everything's great. Everything's peachy. There's no trouble. Because, and I'm going to use a phrase, it's kind of an ugly phrase, but I'm going to use it anyways. You don't want people to know your poop stinks. And I'm using that word on purpose. I'm sorry if it's a little bit too terse. Because sometimes the things that we have, they are ugly. They are offensive. They are troublesome. And that's kind of why I wanted to use an ugly word. And I say all that to say this. Could you imagine a congregation where everybody knows they're struggling? Where everyone knows, and they know everyone knows that they don't have it together. Could you imagine the interactions and the goings on between that group of people? Tonight I want to talk to you about that congregation because it exists. And I actually get to go there quite often. Donnie Green and I are the deacons over prison ministry. And To say it is a joy to get to interact with those men is an understatement. I really look forward to going to Limestone every third Sunday or the third Sunday of each month and preaching to them all. They're a group, until you really interact with them, you don't really understand the dynamics that are there. And I'm wanting to explain just a little bit of that to you this evening. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually an employee at Limestone Correctional also. Alabama has a college system inside the state prison system. And I teach in that college in prison. And so I get to interact with most of these men on a daily basis. I know their backstories. And I think we're being live streamed today, so I'm going to try to be a little bit gentle in what I say. I want to withhold some of the names. I sure hope I withhold the names because they're in my notes. Because I know this is going to be hell for posterity. So I get to know their backstories. I get to talk to them. I get to see what we're doing. How does it impact them? What can we change to try to meet their needs the best? And so I've got kind of a peek behind the curtains. Inmates are a unique person or unique people. And I want to pause here and kind of step out. I understand they're there for a reason. I understand that they made decisions that put them where they are. I understand that they are there to atone for the things that they've done. I fully grasp that. That being said, there are some great, great men there. There are people just like you and I that have made mistakes. Yes, there are some trashy people there also. But both in prison ministry and in my job, I don't interact with them. I'm in my professional career, I'm dealing with the best behavior-wise students. And just being honest, the people you have trouble with don't ever come to our religious services. So we deal with some really great men. But they're a unique group of Christians. They're a unique group of Christians. Because all of us have done things to separate ourselves from our God. Just in man's eyes, the things that they have done are worse. And they've got some rather unique challenges. They've lost their identity. All inmates are assigned an AIS number. I don't know what it stands for. I can figure out if I think about it. But anyways, they're given a number. That's all they are. Their name doesn't matter. Their former life doesn't matter. Who they are family-wise doesn't matter. Just that AIS number. Everything they do is that number. They've lost their value. A lot of the policies and procedures within the prison system are based around control. And one of the things is you don't open a gate until you're supposed to. And there was an instance last week or so where there was a medical emergency, and the inmates were really frustrated because that guy needed help now. The guards knew he was coming, but yet they didn't open the gate until he finally got there. Looking at it from the state's point of view, it makes sense. I mean, there's always other things going on. But from the inmate's point of view, no one cares about them anymore. They're marginalized. And even when they get out, they still have that record. A lot of them will have an S by their name because they've done a sexual nature of crimes. And that's going to limit them even more so as they come out. They've lost their value. They've lost their connections. A lot of families, when someone goes to prison, they cut them off. They don't want this person interacting with their loved ones. And it makes sense. I'm not trying to discount this. I'm just trying to paint the picture from the inmate's point of view. So they've lost their identity, they've lost their value, and they've lost their connections. They consist of very unique people. I spoke with one gentleman. He said, and he told me his story. He said he grew up not atheist, not really agnostic, but just God doesn't matter. That's how he described it. It doesn't matter if there is one, it doesn't matter if there's not one, he'd never thought about God. And he was arrested and he was in jail. And in jail, all he had was a Bible. And those of you who may not understand, when you're arrested, you go to jail. And then after you're found guilty, you go from jail to prison. So once you're in prison, you're going to be there at least a full year. Probably a lot more than that. So he's in jail. He's still awaiting his case. And someone left a Bible in his cell. And just out of sheer boredom, he started reading the Bible. Not to try to figure out what it said, not to try to figure out if it's right or not, just because there's nothing else better to do, I'm going to read this Bible. And then, because everything's about control, when you're moving from the jail to the prison, you're very limited on what you can bring. And everything you have to buy. And it's bartering. So he had a cup, he had a few other books, he had that Bible, and he was limited to 3 things that he could bring from jail to the prison. He brought his cup, he brought that Bible, and I can't remember the third thing he said. But when he transferred to prison, he was still, religion wasn't important to him. It was just, I've got this Bible, I have something to read, I have something to direct my thoughts on. And he had no money. The prison system doesn't provide you much. If you want deodorant, you have to buy it. If you want coffee, you have to buy it. And unless your family gives you money, you can't buy it. They complain about the prices. I've looked the prices up. It's actually not terrible, but to them it's atrocious. And if you don't have money to buy these things, you just have to do without or find a way to barter. And as he was studying the Bible, he realized that he wanted to learn more and that he couldn't study without having someone to interact with. And so he said for the first time in his entire life, he prayed. He prayed for somehow to get some money so he could buy stamps and envelopes to do Bible correspondence letters. And he said one of his friends the very next day just asked him to come by and why don't you come to this Bible study with us? And this lady, he said, I had never met her in my life. She walked up to me and said, what do you need? And he said, I'm good. I don't need anything. No. What do you need? What can I do to help you? He said, well, I need some money on my account for stamps and envelopes. This was 16 years ago, I believe. That lady still puts money in his account today for stamps and envelopes. This gentleman came to jail, came to prison with no Christian basis. Today, he is one of the more integral parts of the religious dorm and actively brings others to the religious services. He is one of the more involved Christians in Limestone Correctional today because of someone involved in prison ministry. One of the stories that touched me the most, this guy isn't really involved in the churches as much, but I wanted to tell you his story just to help you understand where he is, where many of them are. He grew up with his mom moved away when he was young, and his dad was always absent. He said, I had a place to call home, but I never really had any adults there to rely on. If he wanted food, he had to go steal it. If he wanted anything to survive, he had to go get it. So he grows up, from his youth, he grows up in this life of crime. His friends are of the same environment. And so this life is all he knows. There was a particular day, I didn't know I did this until he told me. There was a particular day when anything can go wrong, did go wrong for the students. And he was very proud of a position that he had. And this day it looked like he was going to be losing that position. And to him it was just devastating. I didn't know this at the time. I stood in the room while all this was going on. There were other people going in, asking questions, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to spread rumors and spill the tea, as the kids say. I just stood there. And then they asked us to all leave, and I walked about 10 feet away from him until he had to go to the left and I had to go to the right. To me, that's just normal, just normal interactions. He told me 2 weeks later, well, 2 months later, that was the first time in his life that anyone ever showed him that they cared about him. And I went on to talk to one of the other inmates, one of his friends, and I said, can you help me understand this? And what I've learned is they don't, not all of them, but a lot of them don't have the ability to trust people because they've lived their entire lives understanding that I'm the only one looking out for me. And the prison environment, if you're going to get anything, you're going to get it from somebody else. So it's always taken advantage of or being taken advantage of. Either you're the one taking or you're the one giving. And that's the constant mentality. And I say all that to say, the Christians that are in there and the people who are turning to Christ that are in there, they need us now more than ever. And to say that I love that group of men is a gross understatement. There are many days where, and we all feel this way, when you just don't want to do something. You know, it's like, I really need to do this. There are days where I just don't really want to put my lesson together and walk in there, because it's a hassle to get in there sometimes. But I have never left there thinking, or not thinking, that was awesome. There are primarily 4 dorms that come to our services. There's a lot of dorms there, A through G, I think. But the 4 ones that primarily come to us are H dorm, B dorm, F dorm, and G dorm. Now, why does that matter? I'm glad you asked. H dorm is the best dorm on the prison campus. As I'm told statewide, H dorm is the only dorm that doesn't have violence or drugs. It's really an anomaly in the state. It is run by the inmates. They have their own structure, their own rules. You have to interview to be placed in here. You have to go through an application process. And if you have any behavior issues, you are kicked out. You have to maintain certain standards to stay there. You have to pass bed inspection at a level higher than everybody else. You've got to attend a certain number of religious studies. You've got to attend a certain number of classes, academic classes. You have to be involved in a lot of different things in order to stay in H dorm. These are the best behaved people on campus. You've got B dorm. I said H dorm is the best dorm on campus. B dorm is the best dorm on campus for one reason: they have individual showers. I'm told that means the world to them. And a lot of them really get excited when they get to move to B dorm. And so they want to make sure that they behave and keep their behavior really well to stay in B dorm. The other 2 dorms that we primarily have are F dorm and G dorm. F dorm is the pre-release. If you're getting out within a year, then you're mandatorily moved to F dorm, and they start giving you classes, and they help you get your birth certificate, Social Security card, and try to get you everything you need so that when you leave, you can provide for yourself. G dorm is the SAP, Substance Abuse Program, and they don't want to cause any troubles because then they're going to get kicked out of their drug rehab program. So I say all that to say this. The 4 groups of people that we have coming to our church services have a lot to lose if they act out. There are primarily 3 groups of people that come to our church services: those who are religious, those who want AC. There are very few places in prison where AC is available. Church service is one of them, and it can get cold in there. And those who need a people connection. So what do we do in the services we provide? The third Sunday of each month, we will provide a church service at Limestone Correctional. We'll have just same as what we have here. We'll sing a few songs, we'll have a lesson, we'll have Lord's Supper. It is, for all intents and purposes, it is a religious service. And we'll offer invitation. There are always a ton of responses. I think last week we had, 11 people, and it's typically always double digits. There's been a couple times where in prison the time is very important. If they say you're getting out at 7:30, doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a prayer, they're coming in, they can sometimes come in to get you. Things run on the clock on prison because when the time comes for count, doesn't matter what's going on, we have to count them. And to count them, they separate them out into dorms, and so that really doesn't flow well with us all being in one room. And there are times when I'm worried about us getting kicked out because we've had that many responses. And the biggest thing we do, I wrote, we kiss hands and shake babies. I think I wrote that backwards. The second thing we do in prison ministry is Decatur Work Release. We have a weekly Bible class where we study with inmates. And then quarterly, we'll provide a meal to those who completed the quarterly Bible class. And we had our last meal, today's Wednesday, Monday? I've lost track of what day it is. We had our last meal Monday, and it was really great to be able to interact with those men and talk about their growth and what they're planning on doing and how our studies are helping them to prepare. The biggest impact that we have is not that we're coming and leading songs. It's not that we're coming and delivering a message. It's not that we're coming and really doing anything. The biggest impact we have is standing in the back of a room, shaking hands, looking them in the eye. How are you doing today? After it's over, people come up asking us, will you pray for such and such? And they've got requests just like you and I do. A lot of them are struggling with drugs. I don't know how drugs get into prisons, but there's a tremendous drug problem in there. And a lot of them really struggle overcoming addiction. And they'll come forward and ask for prayers about that. They'll ask for prayers for their family. Probably the most emotional thing that's ever happened to me in there, we got done with services and two men walked up to me. One of them was so emotional, he could not talk. He could not make there was no communication whatsoever. And the other guy said, this is so-and-so. He just learned his sister was involved in a really bad car wreck. All the family's at the hospital. She's not going to make it through the night. Will you pray with us? I don't remember his name. He probably doesn't remember my name. But it helps me remember why we do what we do. Because I'm pretty sure he'll always remember that somebody held him and prayed. And one thing I've often said is folks don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And the people in there know we care. I jokingly asked somebody one time, because I teach, and y'all know I cut up. I have more fun than I should have sometimes. I asked somebody one time, because I walk like a banty rooster. You ever seen a little banty rooster, anything a whooping, but he acts like he's the biggest one in the yard? That's me. And I asked one of my closer students one day, I said, I feel safe in here, but is it really dangerous? Do I have a false sense of security? And the guy laughed, said, do you want to know the honest truth? And I said, now I do. And he said, because you're involved in what you do, and he wasn't talking about my job, he was talking about this. if anybody gave you grief, they wouldn't wake up the next morning. And I laughed. He said, no, I'm serious. We mean that much to them. And I'm not trying to say that from a braggadocious standpoint. I'm saying we, Hartselle, means that much to them. They really appreciate what we do. And it's not the lessons, it's not the singing, it's just showing up, looking them in the eyes. How are you? Treating them like people, giving them back their identity, their value, building that connection. Because Christ died for all of us. So what's it like? What's prison ministry like? Or going into prison, what's it like? And the first few times it's weird because you pull up and there's this little building. Sometimes it's manned, sometimes it's not. And sometimes this grumpy old state worker comes out, what are you doing here? We're Hartselle Church of Christ. We're here for, okay. There's a few times he won't even let you finish talking. He's not been there the last few months. But you go in, and if you spend too much time going from the car to the building, you have someone come out and say, y'all can't loiter here. Then you go up to this big metal gate, and you've got to hold it until they buzz it, and then you push it to go in. And then you go in. Sometimes they make you take your shoes off. Sometimes they don't. They pat you down. There's drug dogs there that stiff you. You got to go through a metal detector. You got to sign in. You got to be fingerprinted. About a 15-minute process just to get in sometimes. And then you're escorted to where you're going, and then you got to go through 1, 2, 3 different gates have to be buzzed open. The first few times it's a lot, but you get used to it. And now I'm there every day, but I genuinely forget that I'm in prison. I have to remind myself that I'm in prison. I cut up with them just like I would the kids here. Sometimes more so. I really enjoy them. The chapel that we work in now, it used to be just a building in the back of a gym or a classroom in the back of a gym. We now have a really nice chapel. It looks just like a church building, and it feels a lot more of a religious nature than the last place. We need people to help us. Not really asking people to come lead singing or preach or teach a Bible class. If you want to, by all means, we'd love for you to. But what we need is people just to show up with us. People to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, say, how are you doing? You start to remember their names. You start to see familiar faces. And it doesn't bother them when you say, I remember you, but please forgive me. Remind me your name. They may kid you a little bit, but when you're trying to make that interaction, they get over it because they know you're trying. We need people to come with us. If that's you, you can go to adocvolunteering.com. You'll click on Religious Volunteer Training. There are some forms there, background forms. You'll do PREA training and chaplaincy training. You'll print those certificates, get your background check form. It has to be notarized, and we can help you out with that. And then hand that to me or Donnie, and then we'll get that to the chaplain. Anyone remember VeggieTales? I loved VeggieTales. I was given this lesson a few weeks ago in prison, and I told you I forget that I'm in prison. Mid-statement, I said, or I told everybody that when I was a teenager in my early 20s, someone broke into my car and they stole all my CDs. And me and my wife laughed about how when they were going through the CDs later on, I was like, VeggieTales, why do you have a VeggieTales CD? And when I said that, I thought, I hope that guy's not in this room. No one got up and walked out. But the first video that they made was, where's God when I'm scared? And that was in 1993. They rose to prominence through the 90s. Their peak was late 99. In 2002, they made a full-length movie called Jonah. Jonah broke the company financially. and a 2003 lawsuit sealed the company's fate. They were eventually sold. DreamWorks now owns them, which is Universal. During all of this, when the layoffs were going on, someone wrote a note and left it on the CEO's desk. Where is God when I'm fired? And I don't know why that story has always stuck with me, but it has. A few weeks ago, Justin read to us from 2 Timothy, and he was talking about Paul when he was in prison. And I never connected the first part of 2 Timothy to the end of 2 Timothy. For some reason, I always separated those out into different chapters, because early on in 2 Timothy, Paul says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of," they knew it better than y'all did, "power and of love and a sound mind." But then when you get towards the end of the chapter, we see Paul is really in despair. He's asking for his parchments. He's asking for the coat. All of his friends have left him. Demas has forsaken him. He's really in a dark space. And we know that when he's writing this, he's in prison. He is most likely in the, I did know the name. Somewhere in my notes. The name of the prison. It is in Rome. It is a hole in the ground. Mamertine, thank you. It is just a hole in the ground. And they would let you down through this hole. And Meg and I have seen it. It is a dark place. Fitting for the words that he used. And the last lesson I gave to the inmates at Limestone was, where's God at Limestone? Because there are some dark things that happen there. And I mentioned a few examples of what I have seen there. And we look at the scriptures, and sometimes it's easy to say, well, just stop it. There's a Bob Newhart skit where I love it. This lady comes in for counseling, and he lays down the ground rules, and then she starts saying, "This is my problem." And he says, "Well, just stop it." And then she says, "I have this problem." He says, "Well, just stop it." And she has some irrational fears. One of her fears is being buried alive in a box. And he finally says, "Stop it, I'll bury you alive in a box." And sometimes, and this may just be Jonathan, but sometimes we look at scriptures as just, well, just stop it. And that's why I brought out 1 Timothy chapter 1, or 2 Timothy 1 and verse 7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Because we look at this like, well, I mean, I should have this. But then we forget that all the work, the effort, and the struggles that surround such verses. VeggieTales looked at that, where's God when I'm afraid, by looking at Daniel. Daniel was a great place in his life. He was in a position of authority, and he got the best of the foods. He got the best of accommodations. You know, whatever Daniel wanted, he had. I mean, he was living the life. The only thing Daniel had that wasn't great was friends, because they had some great connections to the king also, and they connived against him, and taught Nebuchadnezzar into making a law that was contrary to Daniel's beliefs. Does class end at 7:15 or 7:30? 7:15? It's bad when you forget mid-class. So friends came to Nebuchadnezzar and said, "Why don't you make a law that says you're the only thing that matters? Everything revolves around you. Everyone only prays to you. They only bow to you." But Daniel stuck to what Daniel was doing. And I told the inmates, I said, "Brother Jet, that's a great story. But what does a story about Daniel being 3,000 years ago, how does that relate to me? I mean, the world that Daniel lived in and the world that I lived in are two totally different things. Some of them might have even thought that Daniel was thrown into a prison for obeying God. I was thrown into prison for something right the opposite. And that's when I read the strength that comes with Paul's opening in 2 Timothy. Paul had been put in prison several times. When he wrote to the Ephesians and the Philippians, he could live a normal life. He could take friends. He could take relatives. He could still live well. He could still do the things he wanted to do. But in 2 Timothy, towards the end of Paul's life, he was in prison in Rome, in Mamertine prison, and things were not going so well. And then we looked at the end verses. And I closed by a story that I had. A few weeks ago, there are certain things in life that we revolve around certain seasons, and mine's going to start here mid-November when deer season finally gets here. And so I've been trying to get some land ready for deer season. And one Sunday, there was a no percent chance of rain in Hartselle. So I drove to the land about an hour north after Sunday morning, took the girls with me. We get out, and what I didn't realize was north of the river, there was a 90% chance of rain. Well, I had a 2-hour window to cut a few trees down and then get back in the truck and drive back for evening services that Sunday. And so I'm using the chainsaw in the rain, and I disregarded a lot of safety protocols that day. But what I didn't realize was as I was cutting down those little trees, all the vines that was attached to them was poison ivy. And this became abundantly clear to me about 3 to 4 days later. And I itched like crazy. And I would get out of the shower and I'd rub my whole self in anti-itch cream, which lasted about 3 hours. And about 11 o'clock each day, all I'm thinking about is itch cream, because you can't get itch cream in prison. They pat you down. You're not getting it in there, and the warden is not going to approve you to get itch cream in there. So about 11 o'clock, you just start suffering to the end of the day. And one morning, this sounds silly, but I really enjoy sitting there in prison, drinking my coffee, watching the sun rise, watching the birds chirp, seeing the sun gleam off of the razor wire. It's peaceful each morning. It sounds ridiculous. I really enjoy it. One morning, I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, waiting on count to clear, and it occurs to me that I've got 2 more hours of peacefulness before it really hits me. And I'm sitting there just stewing over this thought. And then my mind turned to, for the kingdom of heaven is like a man that finds a treasure hidden in a field. And seeing how important it is, he sells everything he has to buy that field. Because I'd do anything for itch cream around 11 o'clock. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man that sells goodly pearls. And then he finds this really great pearl. And he sells everything he has to get that one pearl. Everything else he'd had up until that point in life doesn't matter. All of the wealth that he has amassed, all of the land he's bought, all of the stuff, it doesn't matter because he wants this pearl. We live in an environment not too different from theirs. The difference between us and the ones in prison is they don't hide the ill intentions sometimes. They flat out say, I'm going to take this from you. I'm going to get this from you. It's open that you're abusing one another in the environments that they live. Sometimes in the environment we live in, it's kind of under the surface. And it's easy to forget sometimes that we are spiritual beings in a physical world. And so the thought that I try to leave them with, and the thought that I want to leave y'all with, is how important is the kingdom of heaven to you? And I don't say that to try to get you to join us in prison ministry, because each of us has different areas that we can be used in. Each of us has our strengths. Each of us has our weaknesses. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love for you to join us. But each of us has an area we should be serving. The kingdom of heaven is so important that we need to remember that some of these things around us just don't matter. They seem so important today, but they just don't matter. And so, as we close, as we go through the end of the week, I ask you to pray for our brothers there in prison. A lot of them were Christians before they came. A lot of them turned to Christ in prison. And a lot of them are in the process of turning to Christ. They are a great group of men. They need us. They need our prayers. They need our love. And it is a pleasure to be able to interact with them. I think I'll give you 2 minutes. Thank you for your attention this evening. Sorry I don't have just that awesome PowerPoint. But y'all have a great rest of your week.